Great introduction. Welcome, everyone, to the Recovery First podcast. I'm your host, Mike Todd. We are here live at the Askham Studios in Greenville, South Carolina. Tonight's show is brought to you by the South Carolina Recovery Housing Association. They have gotten out a little over 1,000 units of naloxones to housing and recovery housing statewide in South Carolina, including 14 reported overdose reversals. Freedom Recovery Center and the Recovery First program is an initiative and community program in Greenville, South Carolina, supporting those who suffer from substance use disorder by providing access to treatment, recovery services, and permanent housing. We want to remind everyone of the South Carolina Recovery Housing Support Hotline. If you have questions about recovery housing or need to speak with a peer support specialist about your situation, call 1-800-396-7919, and all calls are confidential. The Jessie May, we love this initiative. The Jessie May Harm Reduction Bus will be in the old Save More parking lot off Wade Hampton Boulevard. That's kind of the Motel 6 area from 5 to 7 on Friday. They will be giving out naloxone, clean syringes, and spreading love, dignity, and the message of recovery all throughout the community. Also, at the New Life Church, it's kind of in the Berea, White Horse Road area. The address is 2690 Blue Ridge Drive, Greenville. They're there from 7 to 9. If you need more information, don't hesitate to contact us. Okay, so here we are. I'm here tonight with some passionate, I want to emphasize, passionate advocates, okay? I'm going to go around. It's been like herding cats, but we got them here, okay? We got every doggone one of them here. I'm so proud. But I'm going to go around the room and kind of introduce. I guess I'll start with Bobby. Talk to us, man.
How y'all doing, man? Good to see you guys.
Yes.
Some of my favorite people here. I'm Bobby Brazell. I'm executive director of Midlands Recovery Center, RCA since South Carolina PSSs. So I'm glad, and I'm also into harm reduction, and I'm a community distributor of Narcan as well. So
Bobby,
I'm happy to be on here with these guys.
Real quick for our audience, hit with an RCO and that other CPSSS whatever stuff.
Okay, yeah, man. That's a bunch of letters for people who have some specialized training because they have some lived experience with active use and of substances. A certified peer support specialist is a person with lived experience that has some specialized training that can go and kind of walk beside somebody. They don't give advice. They don't tell people what to do. They just help them find their own answer. RCO is a recovering community organization. So I'm a nonprofit. We're a very nonprofit. So we're state funded, and we struggle for every dollar. We have to compete with other RCOs in the community for a very small percentage of funding. So, which creates issues. It creates, you have to compete with your friends, instead of working together for a small part of money. So,
thank you, Bob. Hopefully that'll change.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah. And like you said, my favorite people, Marc Burrows. Tell us what you do, although we talk about it on here all the time.
What's up, brother? It's good to be here.
Yeah,
I'm so happy we could pull this together. And, I'm excited that we have a hot topic that's getting a bunch of attention. And, maybe this will lead to some change. So I'm stoked, man. And, so I run a program called Challenges Inc. We're a syringe exchange program in South Carolina. And I do some MAT as well. And, man, I'm just happy to be here. Thanks.
And the MAT, you work directly. The reason we had you here tonight, you work directly with medically assisted treatment. Okay, right? You are actually educated on this. So thank you for being here. And then Riley Coyote from Georgia. It's good to have you, man. Heard a lot of good things about you.
Right on. Thank you. And yes, it's Riley Coyote on social media, Coyote with a K, Riley Kirkpatrick in that of the world. But yeah, so I'm wicked grateful to be here. I too am a person in long-term recovery, also from opioid use disorder. And I'm a certified peer specialist at CARES. I'm in the state of Georgia, so our licensure is a little bit different. But in the 5 years maybe that I've been doing this, I really have like kind of found my niche, so to speak, in the world of medication-assisted treatment, medications for opioid use disorder. The CARES program, the CARES Academy, we now have specific programs specifically for people who are in recovery, in long-term recovery, and becoming peers, but when their pathway was that of using medications for opioid use disorder. And we train, well, I myself train CARES in general, essentially to make sure that they are educated and schooled in what medication-assisted treatment is, what it looks like, all of those things. I'm also the director of Access Point of Georgia, Inc., which is a fairly new harm reduction program. We are an SSP, a syringe service program. We offer a multitude of recovery resources in all different forms. I'm very passionate both about medication-assisted treatment and harm reduction. I could talk about both for days, but I'll stop my introduction at that and just say I'm glad to be here.
Listen, Riley, we look forward to having you on again. But I can hear the passion. Look forward to talking to you about this. Now, my main man, Michael, I call him the Crouching Tiger. Michael Crouch, talk to us, man.
Hello, my name is Michael Crouch. I am the program coordinator for Favor Oconee Project, which is it's not an RCO, but it's under the umbrella of an RCO, and we do provide peer recovery services in Oconee County and a few of the areas surrounding Oconee County. I'm also a certified peer recovery support specialist, and I work with Challenges Inc. when I have time. But yeah, I'm grateful to be here, and I will say that I'm a person that benefited from the use of methadone. I'm not gonna try to make it sound more socially acceptable and say medication for opioid use disorder. I'll just go straight to what it was, which was methadone. Because methadone is normally more stigmatized than other medications. So I like to be specific about what helped me.
Michael, I actually, and just for clarity here, I'm the guy that actually, I do recovery housing. I work mainly with an indigent population, and I do work with medically assisted treatment, but there are some hurdles and some all this around methadone because it's really hard for us to get them back and forth on a daily basis. But anyway, we can talk about that later. Just for we're gonna jump right into this. Okay, Mark, are you ready? Okay, because this is so. Here's how all this started. I see Bobby smiling. I guess it's a few weeks ago. Marc Burrows did kind of an investigation, and I'll let him talk about this, but it's about recovery housing, and that's where all this kind of started. So, Mark, can you kind of enlighten us on what you found out?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, man, for sure. So basically, I do some work in the hospital, and we work with people who are admitted in like inpatient in the hospital. They're there, usually bacterial infections for 6 to 8 weeks. And we most of these people end up on medication for opioid use disorder, which is an amazing team that I work with, and it's a great program. However, the dilemma is when these people are discharged, they often need housing. So the dilemma is there's nowhere, there's no options. There's no options for these people to get housing. Most of them are uninsured. Most of them are indigent. And so getting them housed once leaving the hospital is a major, major problem. And this is a common issue, I'm sure, with everyone on this call and many addiction professionals and treatment agencies around the state. So long story short, we did some Google research, and myself and a researcher from Prisma, and we came across the SCAR website, which is the South Carolina affiliate for NAR, which is the national recovery residency, like credentialing body, if you will. And so on their website, sure enough, they have 6 programs that are certified as recovery residencies. So when you click on these names on their website, they all come up as MAT friendly. So to be honest, I was like blown away, like, oh my God, we have 6 MAT friendly homes that I had no idea existed, So myself and the researcher started going down the list and calling each program. And what we found was not really any of these programs were actually MAT friendly. For example, one of the programs only allowed Vivitrol. When I asked them why, they gave me some excuse about not being able to dispense medications or something. Another program would reluctantly accept MAT with a forced taper required, which is obviously super dangerous and unethical. Even stranger, they said they had a board certified addictionologist on staff, but so like that's really strange if you have a board certified addictionologist but you don't prescribe medication for opioid use disorder. That's kind of weird. And then the other program that we got on the phone eventually agreed to allow someone to come on MAT, but it was very reluctant. And I, like, as a skilled professional, I was able to like navigate that conversation. But if you were the patient or a family member, there's no way you would have gotten through that phone call getting your child or yourself into that program on MAT. So that's what happened. So we found out, like, hey, we got to call BS here, and this is like false advertising, So that's kind of how it started.
And anybody that wants to jump in here, jump in, because that's kind of what got this thing going. I do want to ask this. So this was the South Carolina Alliance for Recovery Residences. This was these all were certified under the National Alliance for Recovery Residences. So these are the folks that are actually doing the certifications, but yet they are advertising as MAT friendly, and it's obvious that they aren't MAT friendly. I think the thing that really concerns me as a provider, and you guys can jump in here because you guys are the experts. I'm just the recovery housing guy, okay? But how dangerous is it for me as a recovery housing operator to say to someone, you can come to my program, but you have to wean off of this medication in 30 days or whatever it may be. You guys jump in on that as the experts, but for me, I to hear that really blew me away. It really did.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, and I just want to say, in Georgia, specifically in Athens, Georgia, 4 or 5 years ago, there were 0 recovery residences, sober living facilities. Didn't matter what you called it, treatment facilities, nothing took anyone on any form of MAT. Okay.
Wow.
And we attacked this issue with a vengeance, and we did it through education. Okay. And like, I wish I had $1 for every like MAT education training that we did. And I mean, I just can't count how many, but I will say a very, very common thing in relation to that conversation of the House feeling entitled to speak into what tapering looks like, the fact that they should have to taper and do it in X amount of time. There is a huge, I want to say disconnect, but I really just think it's a lack of education. And I'm going to speak just specifically on Suboxone right now, because if we're going to get real into it, most places, I mean, it's like Vivitrol or, no naltrexone, maybe, or yes, hard yes, Suboxone maybe, but methadone hard no. And that's often a common thing. But with Suboxone in particular, when it came out in America, there were 3 common pathways in which it was prescribed. There was a very, very short term just for detox, and then a short term, which was like 30, 60, 90 days, and then long term. And people love the shorter it is, the more they can kind of justify it, with a lack of education around the fact that the longer that people are stabilized on these medications, now I'm speaking on buprenorphine medications, there's a sweet spot where the statistics change dramatically. That's around 18 months. And they say 18 to 24 months or longer. So if someone's stabilized for that long before they taper themselves, and taper themselves in a way in which they do not destabilize themselves, they are astronomically more likely to succeed in maintaining long-term recovery. But when we do these things of like, okay, well, we'll let you be here, but 30 days or if you're not off in 60, we'll boot you, in these really intense things. And it's not, it is not scientifically sound. There is absolutely no research that shows that their opinion, trying to be accepting of buprenorphine products, but only short term, it's counterproductive. And I feel sad because I know they're kind of trying, but this is really where these folks need education, true, hard, just facts of why this is considered the gold standard of treating opioid use disorder. So I just want to throw that in there because we saw that huge, and it was hard. And, I'd be working at places that prescribed MAT meds, different ones at different times, and they would take our folks, but then our folks would come back and be like, oh no, I have to get off in 60 days or they're going to kick me out. And we kept having to go back and go back and go back until eventually we were able to educate the community, but it took a ginormous amount of work. But
I came up with this real quick, Riley. I came up with this with TREE, TREE, and it's trust, relationship, education, and equity. Bobby popped off of there. Bobby, are you there? Because I had a question for you, Riley. Thank you thank you so much. Is Bobby there?
So Bobby's not there, but I will bring him back in once he comes in. He keeps losing his connection.
Yeah,
so
that's
I'll bring him back
okay.
in.
What I wanted to ask Bobby was, Bobby is actually located in the middle of the state, and he does a lot of referrals and intervention. And I was going to ask him what the situation. We can circle back around to him, Michael, Crouching Tiger. My question for you is, why did you decide to become an advocate for this population?
Well, first I want to say that this is a difficult subject, and it feels almost hopeless at times. So I wore this shirt, this coat symbolically, because we're kind of at the place where Clemson's football season is. We don't know how we're going to make it. It's very hopeless, but I still have faith. I still have on my shirt. It's basically, I advocate for this population because they're systematically the most discriminated group of people in the recovery community and in addiction treatment in general. And that's just a fact. Like, they have to hide in secrecy at recovery meetings. You can't take your medication at certain places. When we go into and the main thing is, this is not like a big secret. People know that some of these places, not just recovery housing, but treatment facilities and places, say, we have a taper program. You must taper to participate here. Now, that's not evidence-based practice, but they do it. People get away with it because it's under the loophole of we allow organizations and businesses to make their own policies, even if that policy is done in an unethical manner because it's a business. But and he said he was talking about Bobby being in Colombia. I would say that's where the heart of the problem is, and that's because why are a director of a RCO, a person, and some peer support specialists having to do the heavy lifting to try to change things? Like, our state, our taxpayers fund medication throughout the state at different organizations, and it's not helping people as effectively as it could, because you're putting people on medication that don't have their basic needs met. They don't have transportation, they don't have housing, they don't have access to care, and you're expecting this medication to work for them. And that's taxpayer grant funded money happening for that. And I'm just going to keep it real. Like, we have a state legislature that does not, for the most part, act in a manner that is that believes in research. Our state legislator, it acts in a manner of ideology, and it's individualism and based in what we would call conservatism. Pull yourself by your bootstraps. That's why we have high rates of HIV and Hep C, because we refuse to allow syringe services to be done in a manner, because it's your problem and we're not going to fix it. But at the long run, that costs us as society money. That's why our hospitals are filled with people with COVID. That's why we have overflowing. That's why we have overflowing jail systems, because we haven't moved to a place in our government. Our governing leaders haven't moved to a place to get behind evidence-based treatment. Bobby will tell you, if somebody comes to you with no insurance and no money, where are you going to send them to treatment?
Nowhere. They're
what I'm saying. We have a system that doesn't work, and I feel like what we're talking about is just a symptom of a larger problem. And what always happens is, when we complain about these things, they say, why don't you do some trainings? We'll let you, like, they try to flip it back on us like it's our problem or something. Like, and you can do that training for free. We're not even going to pay you. Like, and that's just it's the most frustrating thing in the world to have to advocate over and over for evidence-based practice.
No,
Hey, and Bobby,
Yeah.
what are you seeing? I know, and listen, I want everybody to know that Oxford House, Lisa called me. Lisa Lindano, she wanted to participate in this. Is it pretty much Oxford houses? Because I know Columbia is Oxford House heavy, and that's good. And I know that they work with medically assisted treatment, but as far as everything else that you see out your way, Columbia, our state capital, where this really needs to be, what the heck is going on out there that you see as you try to take a guy that doesn't have insurance, doesn't have a pot to pee in with to throw it out of? That's what you're dealing with every day. And he's coming out of, places like Waradak, right? And he's on fentanyl. And he gets put on medically assisted treatment. Where do you house that guy? How do you help him? Good luck. Hope you make it.
That's a great question. When you give the answer, let me know, because that's it. We do have Oxford House, and Lisa Lindana is a dear friend, and I'm very lucky to have her as a colleague and a friend, and she helps me. And I mean, without that, we have really zero options. I mean, you have faith-based options, but they do not allow MAT at all. Some don't even allow mental health medications, but see, the problem is that you cannot advertise yourself as a recovery residence if there is no recovery involved, and if you know, if you're not qualified to make that decision, you cannot overqualify, you cannot outqualify yourself over a physician that has said that you need to be on this medication. I'd been on Suboxone myself for a couple of years. It did not work for me, and the only reason it did not was because, you know, my provider lost his license, and I went into withdrawals because his partner refused to make referral to me. And I was a paramedic at the time, working for a medical service as a director. And I was arrested within a week because I tried to taper myself off, and I got arrested for stealing narcotics. And or the nice way is fraudulently obtaining narcotics, but it was I was stealing drugs, so that was what I was doing. But you know, I've been on methadone. But back in even 2010, man, I can remember I was in the IOP program at Richland. The doctor there, when I was inpatient, put me on Suboxone, but then I could not participate in the aftercare program because I was on Suboxone. And that was the same hospital where the doctor had prescribed it. So we have made some leeway. At least it's not that nonsense. But we have so much further to go. I mean, the stigma lies within even our own community, man. You know, we have so many people that are, you know, they're hardliners. They're straight edge. You know, they want to dictate what recovery looks like for everybody else. I think that's dangerous. And it's, I don't have to be a recovery police, thank goodness. You know, I mean, it's about keeping people alive, and that's where we are now.
And let me just, and Bobby, real quick, let me just throw this out here for y'all, okay? Just on the recovery housing piece. And I hear your frustration, but somehow we've got to get in the solution. And I believe Riley Coyote over there, he got in the solution through education, but I want to bring something up. There is a bill that is going through the House right now, and it is about certifications and recovery housing, okay? Now, DEOTUS, which for everybody is the Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, they are going to anoint or pick someone to do that certifications process. It's probably going to be the South Carolina Alliance for Recovery Residences, okay? Now, inside of that bill, it says that not only if you want to get referrals from state agencies, I guess it's Department of Corrections or county agencies, or if you want to continue to get referrals or any kind of funding, that you have to be certified, and you have to work with medically assisted treatment. Okay. Now here's the key to that. It sounds like we got a lot of loopholes here. So what we have to do as advocates is we have to get with the legislator and the guy who wrote this bill up, and that's Russell Fry, along with the Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, wrote this bill up. So my question is this: I think that we need to define what medically assisted treatment is. What is, because if we don't, somebody's going to say, well, I work with medically assisted treatment because they can come here and take Vivitrol. So I'm just asking, how do we do that? I think we've got to get a hold of legislators. There is a bill, but it looks like they're still going to do things kind of like that way. That's just what I'm saying.
I definitely can speak on this. I was like watching to see if anyone unmuted themselves. Well, and we kind of went through this in Georgia where, and what's hard is that, like, yes, you can say I'm okay with MAT. And I just want to preface this and say, like, medication assisted treatment, MAT, MAR, medication assisted recovery, people will kind of argue about these and which one's more true or real for who. SAMHSA, the last year or two, has been suggesting medications for opioid use disorder, whatever language it is that we use. There are medications that range from literally an opioid blocker, like an antagonist, like Vivitrol or naltrexone, right? All the way to a full agonist like methadone. And those are like wildly different ends of the spectrum. And one thing that we bumped up against a lot was, even if we split hairs in the wording, or folks saying that they were okay with residents or clients or patients or participants or whatever being on MAP meds, they would have things in their own policy that would become a barrier. Okay. So in that, like a lot of different things. Exactly. And we, with different houses, we had to get very creative, and we tackled it one medication at a time. And I wish we didn't have to do that, but that is what we did. So at first it was getting the house okay with Suboxone, right? And there was a few of them. It took a while before they were okay with methadone, but they had to see that like nothing horrible happened. But it was kind of intense, but those very specific policies where it's like, well, we don't want any kind of agonist, even if it's a partial agonist, on site here. Right. Which is where my job position as a CARES or as a certified peer specialist would come in. I initially worked for the PROUD program, which PROUD is an acronym for Peers Recovering from Opioid Use Disorder, right? And I cannot tell you how many weekends I would show up at the clinic with people's little bubble packs and give them their medication, because the house absolutely refused to hold it on site. Many of those houses have since changed. There were houses that we literally would purchase safes for, and then one of us would come open the safe. But it was those kinds of details that, and just as far as that conversation of being in the solution, that we had to literally kind of hold the hands of the houses and get their quirky little policy and procedures to accept or I looked at it as we were finding effective ways around the thing that they were worried about. Right. And now it's later now. And now it's like, you can be on methadone. It's fine.
So, but Riley, who is the CARES? Who's the CARES team? Like, what is that?
So, well, that's a good question. So CARES is an acronym for Certified Addictive Recovery Empowerment Specialist. So that's the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse.
That's the problem.
Essentially trains us. Yes. And that's the thing. Because if you don't have somebody in this position that can be a go-between, and I don't know how we could have done much of what we did if we didn't have people like myself in that space.
Right. No, like Michael said, we are all sitting here on our own time with full-time job. I think I've been signed up for 3 trainings since advocating for this issue 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? When I reach out to our single state authority, I'm given a pat on the back and told to go figure it out. Good luck. That seems, even when we talk about MAT or harm reduction, syringe services, that seems to be the common theme in South Carolina compared to other states who have been successful with these issues, is that there's some missing link going on with state agencies, funding, federal dollars. There's something happening in South Carolina that involves our single state authority that is not happening the same way in other states. And I think that is the cog in the wheel that is preventing a lot of things.
Because we don't have a council on substance abuse. We don't have do they not oversee, what do they do specifically? Do they oversee the RCOs, or they do recovery services on the state level, right?
They do that also. And I'll just use that as a shout out for Neil, who is the most powerhouse woman in recovery that I have ever met in my life. And 12, 15 years ago, she created this, and she has made enough noise at the local level, at the state level. The state, I mean, they get funding from all over the place in order to do these trainings. And it's crazy because Georgia, I mean, it's Georgia. I'm not from Georgia. Like, it's like near, like Georgia. But like, we have one of the best, we have one of the best peer specialist trainings, which is mind blowing. But it is, I mean, if you ask me, it's like because of recovery leaders like Neil who just like, boom, did it. And we, I know we're talking on Facebook about like organizing and things. And I mean, I just want to say, like, I really hear Marc and like, I validate that. And I know I know that South Carolina is not Georgia, but I think that Georgia was South Carolina not that long ago. And just by means of like what we can do, I do feel empowered. And that's that shit where like we need to organize, and how can we organize, and like who can carry the torch in what way. But
I'm sorry, I was just going to jump in here. Like, Jeff Breedlove, also with the Georgia, he is a great guy. I've had the opportunity to have him on some different other programs. And Jeff is always posting, like if you go on Twitter, if you go on Facebook and you look at the Georgia Substance Abuse Council, their social media, they're always involved with something to bring advocacy around. So just wanted to throw that in there real quick as well. It's another way to kind of see what they have done, and maybe a way that we can also emulate that too.
It's true. And Jeff Breedlove is one of many positions that they have created with one specific intention. And Jeff Breedlove is really good at his job. But I do think that the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse are beautiful taillights to follow. Like they are doing something that is working.
Yeah, and hold on, and that brings us to something, Bobby. So let's check. Okay, so hold on. I want to say something. The Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services, and guys, we've got the Recovery Coalition that is being formed. Is there a way to pull something just like they actually created this Recovery Coalition. Is there a way to do this inside of the Recovery Coalition, Bobby? Do you think that's something that we can do? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, just like what Marc said. Marc, I worked with the IAC team. We helped form the IAC team along with Dr. Goodman at Prisma Health Richland. Now we're at Prisma Health Park Ridge and Baptist. It's the inpatient addiction consult team. And so as part of that, people who are hospitalized for endocarditis, osteomyelitis, sepsis, abscesses, we have to make the public know that it affects them, whether they think it affects them or not. So it affects them because those people the one hospital averages about 50 patients a year, and those 50 patients are not insured. They are self-pay, which means that is no pay. And they will average from a month to 4 months in the hospital, some getting heart valve replacements, things like that. I want to tell you, like, how much do you think one patient hospitalized for 4 months to get heart valve replacement would cost, and for a hospital stay for 4 months? Now, multiply that times 50 per year. Now, the taxpayers pay that, okay? Or we could have syringe exchange services. So I can give out naloxone. I have fentanyl testing strips that is okay to give out, but I cannot give out syringes because that's illegal. Now that's ludicrous, man. So that's why I'm giving them to Marc, because Marc will give them. But they're, it's like, I don't understand the reasoning behind it. It is it's considered drug paraphernalia, because it has one purpose. Well, fentanyl testing strips, they have one purpose. That doesn't make sense to me. So we're way behind. We've got a lot to do. Once we can educate, part of what we do with the IAC team is I speak with the second year med students and I talk about stigma and language of recovery. And we have to educate people because they're scared of what they do not understand. For one thing. And we have to stand up for ourselves, man. Like, we have a voice. They work for us. We don't work for them, right?
Thank you. Boom.
Yeah. I mean, we have to demand what we want, and I think that's what it is. And we have to demand it in a very clear way, and we have to represent ourselves well.
I want to throw this out at y'all, okay? And what if, okay? Because what we're dealing with is the haves and the have-nots, okay? If I have insurance and I have, the ways and means to go to treatment, and then I get to go to a certified NAR or SCR recovery house, I mean, there's always somebody there to advocate for me, right? I mean, if I'm the haves, let's talk about the have-nots. We're talking about people. There's nobody there to advocate for them. Okay, the guy that's indigent, the guy that like what you deal with, Bobby, and that you and I work with. So what if we did this? What if we had recovery housing like the recovery housing that I have, and we created regulation? Now, I know that's a bad word, but what if we created regulation where, like with my program, I'm like, look, I'm absolutely okay with anybody at the state agency. I've made this perfectly clear. And they have come to our program. That we have an open door policy. But what if we did like a safety walkthrough? We made sure that they had insurance, liability insurance. We made sure that the RCA maybe helped do this. That we made sure that they had commercial insurance on the vans, that the owner was willing to be registered, and that the owner was willing to work with medically assisted treatment. And now we get those programs to partner with the county agencies, like what I do with Phoenix Center. What if we did something like that? I think it would work. Because here's the thing. Somebody's got to advocate for these. Because listen, all of them are getting nothing but a dang ride to the chicken farm. Let's be real. Okay? They're not going to go to a certified recovery house. When Mark did that research, they were between what, Mark, $2,000 to $10,000 a month?
Yeah, the cheapest one was $2,500.
The cheapest one was $2,500. My program is $700 a month. It's $170, and we have food for them, and we do work with medically assisted treatment. So my point is, what if we started to approach some programs and said, hey, would you like to get regulated? There's funding. Would you like to work with our version of the CARES team? What about this for solutions, guys? I mean, we really need to sit down and have some roundtables because I'm damn sick of it. I'm tired of people not having access. Getting exploited, getting a ride to the chicken farm, whatever it may be, and the guy that has resources will get to go to a NAR certified recovery house. I mean, I think this certification process could actually create more of a gap.
And listen, if you have state funding, you have to have regulations. I mean, seriously, like I have state funding, I have regulations.
Okay,
I mean, I don't get to do what I want to. But
now we're on to something.
Yeah, like you don't get to get state funding and not have regulations. I can't just spend money how I want to, or I'd have a wall full of Les Pauls back here. I'd be like, well, there's no regulation. So, but I don't get that. So I'll offer free training to anybody at a recovery house for certified peer support specialists if they will participate in any of that. I mean, I'll do anything I can to bring it, to bring people in. The consult team is doing great. We make, we were just published in the American Journal of Medicine for our pilot project. I mean, so it is effective to have peer support, medical staff, all of this all around, wraparound care, but you have to be able to send them somewhere that's reputable that they can set them up for success.
Can you tell us more about that, Bobby?
Which part?
Tell us more about what was in the journal or whatever.
Okay, so we started this pilot program with the IAC team is Dr. Goodman and Paul Borneman. And so we have basically included, they're already in the hospital. We initiate peer support specialists, initiate an introduction to get them comfortable with us while they're inpatient. Okay. Because they're going to be there for a while. So we start working with them to try to figure out what their goals are and set goals for long term. The hospital stabilizes them on MAT. Now it's up to us to help try to find recovery residences or the next level of care for them. Maybe it's not sober living yet, but we figure out what the next level of care would be for them. Okay. We started a pilot project with 50 clients. Okay. And out of those 50 clients, we had a very good outcome when we had the entire network working together. And that's the thing. It got us published. I mean, it was evidence-based. It worked, and we had great outcomes. We followed them for 6 months to a year.
Bobby, real quick, you guys have got me excited. I apologize. But what if, with all this wonderful folks, if you're listening, these are the folks with the boots on the ground, okay? What if, with everything that you're doing, if you had somebody like Loredac, and that is your county authority, right? That is where most of the indigent people are going through Loredac, correct?
Not necessarily. Well, for IIP, they don't meet medical criteria for inpatient treatment if they're only if it's alcohol or benzodiazepines.
Got you. But what if you had a regulated recovery housing program that the state was involved with? It would have an open door policy, like Greg Jacobs or Jan or any of those could come in at any time and inspect those houses. What if you were able to have a recovery house that was regulated that partnered with the Loredac IOP? So now they are getting their medication, they are getting their IOP, they're getting rides to recovery housing, and they're surrounded by peer support. Guys,
why couldn't they? Why couldn't they? If they're funded by that agency, they had that right to come in there and do that to me now if I'm funded by that agency, right? They can come in and audit. They can make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm held accountable for the spending of the money to be financially responsible. If you're funded, then yes, they should have the right to come in and inspect your place to make sure you're doing what you say you're doing. Why wouldn't you?
Guys, pipe in. What do you think? I'm talking about, like, certification fits well with a upper end recovery housing. Okay, that I need to get NAR certified, and I need something for the parents to see when they go and look at my program. Oh, they're NAR, SCAR certified. But I'm talking about, and they have plenty of people advocating for them. Okay, I'm talking about indigent folks that need to go to a regulated recovery residence or house that allows this medication, and they're surrounded by peer support, and it's a safe place because we all know it's safe because we're all walking through there. I think that this could possibly work.
I just want to say that we do have a NAR certified recovery program in Greenville who requires taper when you come in. So I think I do agree that we can have certified housing and regulating. But again, like, I feel like this is not that big of a complex issue. We're talking about a very non-harmful medication, and we make it so complex. Like, that's a retirement home requiring you to taper your blood pressure medication in order to live there. What in the heck is that about? That doesn't make sense. I feel like we need to look to the people that have the political power in the state to make these changes.
That's
so
that's the taxpayers.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. If it's taxpayer, they're coming through the county agency, the meds, the counseling, everything, all the support, and the housing works within that. Somebody may shoot me tomorrow because I said regulation, but I think that this could work because I can tell you that I'm doing it. Okay, I mean, I am already doing this.
Well, we need regulation. Like, we want our our parents and grandparents when they go into assisted living for those homes to have regulation.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, we want regulation within our hospital systems. Like we want regulation because to keep people safe. I want banking regulations. I want my money to be safe, and we want people with substance use disorders to be safe. But when I get back to our if y'all see people in the Recovery Advocacy Project, like Joanna Vance, she's on Facebook, social media with elected officials from her state.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
state leaders are saying, "I support recovery," and I don't see that in our state. I don't see anybody. Now I see people doing things maybe behind closed doors. We don't have elected officials saying, "I support recovery." We may do a campaign here or there, but nobody's really advocating for change. Nobody's standing up and talking about how our jails and prisons are overcrowded with people with substance use disorders, how we continuously lock people up. You know, if you ask Lindsey Graham what about the subject of addiction, you know what he'll say? He'll talk about tougher laws for fentanyl trafficking. You know, he doesn't have a reason. So again, I want to get in the solution too, but I want to hold people's foot to the fire. If you work in this field and you say you're a recovery advocate, you know, whether you work at a county agency, whether you work for Deotis, whether you work for the government, whether you're the mayor, or whether you are a sheriff, then you need to put some action behind your lip service, because we have sheriffs. Look at the Spartanburg sheriff. He talked about people with substance use disorders like they're the scum of the earth.
We're marginalized. We're marginalized population.
We need a voice that says, no, that's not okay. You know, whether it be a conservative like Newt Gingrich who advocates for medication assisted treatment or medication for opioid use disorder, or whether it is a super far liberal like Andrea AOC, you know, or whoever. But we just don't have that. We don't have a voice that stands up for us, and marginalized people need that, you know. And I just
challenge a huge voice.
Stand up for us, anybody.
But we have the Recovery Coalition. We have started a Recovery Coalition that is similar to what Riley's talking about. We have that. We also have the Recovery Advocacy Project. Riley, I see you want to say something. I think we're on the tails of what Georgia's doing.
Well, I think that a huge part of the conversation that we're not having here is that, like, I hear all this and I hear two things. I hear policy and I hear funding, right? Okay. And like, yeah, and we can talk about, like, you know, support from the recovery community forever. But if that recovery community believes that there's one and only one pathway to recover, and that is abstinence-based and medication-assisted treatment is not part of that, boom, we've already shot ourselves in the foot, right? But the whole conversation that I think that we're not having, and like we're talking about the haves and have-nots, and like, let's just pretend here for a minute that I'm in South Carolina, which I'm not. And let's pretend that I am an incredibly privileged cis white man, which I'm not. I mean, I'm white, but whatever. That's a whole nother thing. But if the policy is not in place that can hold space for me to recover with methadone or Suboxone or any kind of buprenorphine product, it's irrelevant. And like, it doesn't matter how privileged I am or am not, if the policy is not in place that will hold space for somebody to have access to both medication-assisted treatment, medications for opioid use disorder, whatever, and to be living in a state. And that's the biggest thing that infuriates me, because when we get into statistics, if somebody does have access to medications and to a supportive recovery community and space in which they can live, like, their chances of success are astronomically higher, but there's so few places that will do that. So, I mean, that's the concept of policy, which I think it just has to be part of the conversation. And I know we talked about this on Facebook earlier. I mean, like, y'all, we've had so many states sue pharmaceutical companies for millions of dollars. There's STR grants, there's SOR grants, state opioid response grants. And it like blows my mind when I see folks at like different various agencies asking for this money, and it's not us, and it's not people asking for money for medication assisted treatment and money for housing for those with opioid use disorder. And that is something like there is a lot of money there. I just don't see very many of us being strategic and chasing that money. And like, as far as having a strategy and organizing, I think we need to start looking at that.
Gotcha. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say real quick, when in my research on this, all these phone calls and meetings I've had, one of the big things I've noticed, or one of the big answers people bring at me, is funding. They say, well, you know, in our state, these houses don't get funding if they're not MAT friendly. So my question to Mike or whoever is, what funding is there in South Carolina for housing? Is there any? I know you've talked about some grant money available from the 301 that will pay for a guy's bed, things like that. But it seems to be that in other states, there's like all this housing funding. So where is that? What's going on here?
Well, in 2019, Lisa's not here, but I want to make sure. I believe the state agency funded Oxford House to the tune of about $600,000. Bobby, I don't know if this is, and then in 2020, I think a little over $1 million. I think, and so Oxford House is getting funded, but 99.9% of the other houses are not getting funded because, and my understanding is because they don't know what they're funding. There's no certifications program. There's no regulation. It's like that's my understanding.
Okay, so if we could get houses regulated, then maybe some funding doors would open. That's what it sounds like.
That's what I think. I think between the certification and regulation, which somebody like me, I'm fine with regulation. One of the things that when I first started a couple of years ago, when I first started working with medically assisted treatment, I mean, I got a phone call with somebody grilling me about, well, how do you disperse medication? Well, we don't disperse medication. We leave it in the box. They come in, we open up the box, they take their medicine out, and they take it, we just log it, and they put it back in the box. I mean, and that's just, so my answer is we don't disperse medication. So whoever it was from whoever or whatever, when you said earlier that said, well, we can't disperse medication. No, I don't disperse any medication. They take their medication. All I do is observe. Is that correct with what y'all see? Am I doing it correctly?
Yep. Or somebody could have a nurse on staff and they could give out medication.
Well, I can't afford a nurse.
But
if you have a nurse, brother, I got a nurse. It's Nurse Kobe.
We got more funding. You could though, if we get a little.
Yeah, if we got funding, absolutely. But there's no way.
A driver, get you some more paid staff. Can I ask you, as a housing, do you feel like would it be helpful for you to have more funding, to be able to have a nurse, to be able to have
a nurse, to have drivers for the vans, to have peer support, to have all that stuff? There is so much that we could build from. But at this point, in 10 years into this thing, I'm just going to tell you, heck, I'm tired. Okay, I mean, I've been working for freaking peanuts, getting my butt beat all over the place. And I mean, so at some point, you throw up your hands and go, okay, I'm 50. How old am I now? 56. And it's getting to the point, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm like, man, I'm getting tired. I don't make any money. I have to trade for guys that drive the van, or if I have I've got a house manager, he stays there for free, but he works. I mean, I have to get all creative in how to make this place safe. And I'm one of the few people that work with, y'all chime in if you know anybody else that's working with indigent folks at MAT. That's me. I mean, so.
Only some people to work. Only work for free.
Yeah, I mean, so go ahead, Riley.
Well, the thing that I'm real quick, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
We got to
Riley.
wind it down, but
But
it's been good.
The thing that I wanted to throw in was I know in Virginia, I just sat through a conference. It may or may not have been, it may or may not have been for one of the agencies that we just mentioned in here, this nationally accredited. You can put the initials together. And I just did a conference for the live stream for them. And one of the things they were talking about was a 10% set aside is what they're trying to get passed in the legislation in Virginia. Would the politicians in South Carolina, and could they get together behind something similar? And even if they did, would it be already taken off from the top for law agencies who are buying more stuff to pad the jails with? This is what I've seen in Virginia that's happened before. Stuff gets passed for funding for states to be able to help out with just in housing or whatever, and then off the top of it, you have so much of maybe 3/4 of it goes to law enforcement. And I'm not saying that's not important. That's not what I'm implying there. But what I'm trying to say is there a way that we could to get someone in South Carolina to get behind it and have it earmarked on top of it so it can't be taken from another treatment agency or another treatment center who comes in all of a sudden because they see this block grant and then they start applying for stuff whenever they don't necessarily even qualify for it.
Well, they're trying to get a lot of the states, because I know in West Virginia, some recovery advocates, they're trying to get 10% of the state funding for substance use period to go to recovery services. So that would be like peer support, recovery housing. So it's not just the state budget, it's the budget for substance use, because a lot of our state budget goes to prevention for substance use. A lot of money goes to prevention and then treatment. So we're just trying to carve out our, I don't know in South Carolina if we're doing the 10% thing, but I know I've helped out in West Virginia, and they're just begging and pleading for 10% of the state authorities for substance use for the 10% of that budget, just for recovery services. So I don't know, that's a cool. I would love to hear our numbers.
Well, hold on. There is money supposedly being set aside by the Biden administration for recovery services only for 2021. But here's the thing. Legislators and the folks in Columbia have got to know, they're hearing all these horror stories about that. All they hear is chicken farms and, controlling their money. And I mean, they're hearing and drug dealing. I mean, they hear all the horror stories of these places, but we need places that will just open up their doors and say, yes, I will work with the state agency in transparency. I will work with the county agencies in transparency. I'm not going to say I'm MAT friendly when I only do Vivitrol or I'm making somebody take. Folks, I'll say it as we wrap this up. That is unethical. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is you're calling yourself, you're supposed to be, providing ethics for recovery housing, and you're doing something like that. Mark, you can chime in if you want to, but it's nothing short of unethical in my opinion. I'll wrap up with that.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's like, we're stating the obvious. It's an evidence-based practice. Like, it's obviously unethical to be making these medical decisions without medical professionals, and it's just not cool. So I think it comes back to our single state agency, our single state authority. I mean, like Riley, with the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, like, do you know people there that are down with harm reduction, that are down with like drug user rights, that are down with medication for opioid use disorder? Like, do you know good people within Georgia Council of Substance Abuse? Because I'm guessing you do. And I don't know if I can really say that for our state agency in South Carolina. Not really.
But
I can't.
That's part of growth, though. And I will say, like, I got paid to do a 90-minute harm reduction webinar for them, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, where that never would have happened 5 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. But 5 years ago, we were like working on getting them really truly to like accept CARES or people that were coming into the CARES Academy whose pathway was medication assisted treatment, right? And I mean, I really look at this as just like this kind of constant of pushing the edges, right? Like, and doing it like gracefully and kindly. So we're not coming in with sludge hammers, like trying to like, we're going to make this epic amount of change, but just like kind of evaluating where things are and are changing them. But I'm listening to this and like, I'm going to say this, and there's part of me that like wants to pinch myself as I say it, but like Access Point is a 501c3, a nonprofit, and we have somehow gotten funding from the state that is like notoriously not harm reduction friendly, right? But like, I feel like when we go through all these scenarios of like where this money is coming from, who it's accessible to, who's asking for it, and how they're asking for it. Because my last job, I was a peer at an OTP, and we asked for significant funding for subsidy slots for people so that we could put people on methadone or Suboxone for free. And for housing. And I was the lead of the housing stuff. Like I could write checks for people and get them into housing so long as they could get into housing. But like we stumbled through all that stuff. But like prior to us doing it, we didn't even know if it was possible. But a lot of that stuff that we did was federal. And there is, and the Biden administration, like, and even it's like $31 million. And like, that might seem like a lot, but when you spread it around the harm reduction.
Is that nationally, Riley? Is that what they're giving out now? Yeah. Like I was trying to figure out how much could come to South Carolina.
I don't know what that is. I don't know what South Carolina got in the like private.
Well, I don't think it has passed yet. The set aside hasn't passed yet. It hasn't.
But it is. Yeah, but like there are OTPs and OBOTs. Like OBOTs can ask for money, either for funding for we were trained to call them subsidy slots, but if it's indigenous people that just like not indigenous,
indigent.
I said that.
You know what I mean?
That's where we need the help, man. Nobody's advocating for us.
But like it is
for those people.
Yeah. That money here is just kept within the state agency system, and so we don't have those things.
That's what I'm wondering though, is like how much of this conversation, or like if it's so many people that have so much energy, where does the energy need to go? Does it
the Recovery Coalition?
Does it need, and like, I don't know.
I think we all have our
guys are the experts on your state.
I think we all have our own individual voices, and that's what's important. All of us do different things. All of us advocate in different ways. Some people in different places, and that's what's important. For me, I'm going to keep speaking up for that one person that's going to go into a recovery meeting and have to be quiet about their medication and not tell anybody. And then the same person that's treated like garbage everywhere they go because they take an FDA approved medication that is not as near as harmful as many other medications. But that's just what's helpful for me. That's my higher power's will from my 12-step days. I always say that I'm going to get. I want to go work the steps with a person that's on medication just to like piss people off. Like, so I can say my sponsor takes methadone just to piss people off. But that's my role. That's okay. Like, we need to do what's best for our role.
But I do believe that our state agency wants to work with us. They just don't really know how. And I think that we've created this recovery coalition for us to have a voice. Wrapping everything up.
They're definitely not making it known that they want to work with us. Lots of emails and phone calls, and I was almost dumbfounded today. I got an email from someone over there showing me the list, showing me that they have added the SCAR certified housing list to their website, to the Deotis website. After, that's literally what I brought to their attention, and they told me they didn't support that association. And now they're promoting it on their website. If you go to the Deotis website and you look for recovery housing, guess what you're going to find? The bullshit SCAR list that I've found out. Like,
and
this is what we're dealing with. So, you know.
And the thing is, that's, you know, if people are, when people are, we advocate for a lot of people that are coming out of the courtroom system, you know, court system, and in lieu of jail, we try to get them into treatment. And sometimes, if you know, if they fail these programs, or they don't complete these programs, then they're looking at jail time. So, and if you send them on a medication assisted treatment to a place, and then they are forced to taper off, you're setting them up for failure, and then they have real consequences, you know, death being the main one, and then incarceration and things like that. I do think our state authority supports us. I just don't think you know, I don't know if they know how or have the power to implement the laws. And I think the taxpayers and us in recovery, we have the obligation to speak up and to be the voice and to be a united voice. And we're split amongst each other most of the time a lot.
To say,
I do have a question. Did they put MAT friendly on the Deotis website?
They didn't change it one bit, and I even asked them, could we at least update this list so it's reflecting accurately? And you know, no.
I'm not even going to ask you how that made you feel, because, you know, anyway. And I don't want to wrap this up on it, because I didn't know that. That's just cool. But anyway,
so we fund drug courts, and you can't take the medication, but then we fund the medication that you can't take in the drug courts. It's pretty ridiculous. And I think if we had commercials and news stories about this, the public would say, that's screwed up. Why are we paying for medication that you can't take in these other programs that we're funding at the same time? You know, and it's really, the message needs to get out to the folks, because the folks will change stuff overnight. You know, this is a alternate issue, you know, but things happen, political things happen like that when the public, you know, when the public says we want no more, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But I just think the public is not aware of these big contradictions.
So that you make them aware by the financial burden that it puts upon them. That's how you make them aware.
The financial burden people listen to, and like, I just want to say, like, we do have to wrap this up. I feel like Marc probably spoke the least, but like, I just want to really validate his frustration that like, that is very real. And I imagine he's probably hitting his head against a brick wall. I do hope at some point that like some kind of solution can be, or even just like some kind of strategy can be discussed. But I don't know, like I just kind of want to validate his frustration, because it's real. And
Marc, dude, you're my rock star.
So unethical behavior.
Thanks, Riley. Appreciate it. Thanks, brother.
Hey, I love you guys. Thank you so much. We are going to continue. This is only the start. We got to get our voice heard. We got to get ourselves to a table, whether it's the Recovery Coalition or Recovery Advocacy Project. I want to tell everybody, we are organizing. Chris Stepp, we want to have you on here. I just saw you. Love you guys. I want to end this with Go Atlanta Braves.
No.
Bring the World Series to Atlanta. Bobby, I don't want to hear it.
No, tell Marc he's got to bring his guitar and his drum set over here, man. We got a Marshall set up.
Dude, let's
do it.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is I got Todd here, our producer. Let's start having this conversation. I talked to him about you guys kind of being like co-host stuff. Thank you, everybody that tuned in. Hey, and let's do this. Share the heck out of this, okay? Share. Love you, Todd. Take us out. Everybody's got to go home. Thank you for your time.
Big A, guys.
So 30 years ago, when I first came into recovery, we didn't have recovery housing. If someone was seeking recovery and maybe coming to meetings and didn't have anywhere to live, we basically try to help them find somewhere to live. And that's how it all started. We all started basically living together and keeping each other accountable in recovery. Now, as the years have gone through, it's basically turned into an industry. And with that industry, there comes a lot of challenges. There's quite a bit of exploitation. You're dealing with a very, very vulnerable population. So that's the reason that we started the South Carolina Recovery Housing Association, to help providers, to help other recovery housing operators, to help mentor them, to advocate for them. And one of the things that we did right off the bat was we started getting naloxone into all recovery housing in South Carolina. We were very fortunate to get a grant from the Clinton Foundation and some help from the Recovery Advocacy Project and Challenges Inc. and Favor Greenville. And, all of them combined have helped the South Carolina Recovery Housing Association to begin getting naloxone into all recovery housing in South Carolina and to help train their residents on the use of naloxone. We believe that is the first standard that we need to accomplish in South Carolina. Recovery housing operators are a very valuable resource to those suffering from substance use disorder in South Carolina, and we want to advocate for them, train them, mentor, and just work with them with whatever needs that they may have. If you want to get in touch with us, it's screcoveryhousing.org.